Hello everybody, my name is The Combat Kid, and today I am starting a little series in build-up for UFC 238, Moraes vs. Cejudo. In this series, I will break down both Moraes' and Cejudo's previous fight. Today, I will talk about Moraes vs. Assunção 2. Tomorrow, I will upload a video about Cejudo vs. Dillashaw. On Friday, I'll make a video doing a general overview of the card, and then on Saturday, I'll most likely do some kind of recap of the event once I've finished it. So, let's get into it already. First, a brief history. Marlon Moraes entered the UFC with a lot of hype behind him. People were claiming he was really one to watch. And then it was announced his debut fight would be against Rafael Assunção. Hell of a debut fight, man. So, that just shows you how hyped up he was from the very beginning. I mean, they're throwing him up against one of the most consistently winning bantamweights in UFC history. And yeah, he did pretty well. It was a very close fight. But a fight that he would ultimately lose by split decision, although some debate that. He then fought John Dodson, and it was another split decision, but this time he won. And after I saw those two fights, I was thinking, yeah, he's good, but I'm noticing a trend here. He's kind of impatient. He was impatient in both the Dodson and especially the Assunção fight. Like, he was rushing a lot and forcing things instead of picking his shots and looking for his openings. At the time, I figured that was because he was inexperienced. And yeah, I didn't know all that much about him at the time. But looking back on it now, I realize that it was probably octagon jitters. I think he was nervous those first two fights and just kind of needed a couple to work his nerves out and get in his zone, really. And once he did, oh man. His next fight was against Aljamain Sterling, and he looked phenomenal in that fight. I watched that fight and I was shocked. He was patient, he was picking his shots, he was pulling the trigger when he should, he was doing everything right. He dropped Sterling early in the first round with a punch and swarmed him, but Sterling rolled looking for a submission. Moraes intelligently got off the ground with him, and when they stood up, he unleashed a devastating left head kick which flatlined Sterling. After watching that fight, I was wondering, where the hell did this guy come from? Where was he in the Assunção fight? He looked phenomenal in that fight. He really impressed me there, and that's when I saw that, yeah, he is something really special, isn't he? His timing and his technique and his eye for openings was insane, but his next fight was just as crazy, if not even crazier. He next fought Jimmy Rivera, who was kind of being hyped up at the time as the guy to really give TJ a run for his money. You know, a lot of people thought he was going to be the one to take the strap. Well, Moraes wasn't having it. He waltzed in there, threw a naked switch kick, and that was about the end of that story. And those two fights demonstrate what is really dangerous about Moraes now. Since his fight with Dodson, and he's kind of calmed down and worked out his nerves, and he's relaxed and patient now, you really get to see how good his timing is and how sharp his eye for openings is. The fact that he was able to land a naked switch kick on Jimmy Rivera is insane. But his timing and his eye for openings and his speed, it was enough. That is incredibly impressive. And a few months after his victory over Rivera, Dillashaw successfully defended his belt against Cody in the rematch. And of course, Moraes wants that title shot. But there is one man who has a claim against his. And that is the first man to beat him in the UFC in his debut, Rafael Assunção, who had actually just beaten Font a few weeks before he beat Rivera. And so it was a tough choice. Assunção has been grinding out wins for years and actually has a win over the champion. But at the same time, he also lost pretty handedly to the champ in the rematch. Moraes, on the other hand, has never fought the champion, and since the first fight with Assunção, has fought higher competition and looked more impressive doing it. But at the same time, he doesn't quite have the list that Assunção does. So who gets the shot? The guy who's been grinding out victories for a long time now, or the guy who burst on the scene and obliterated 2 top contenders and made it look easy? Well, neither. This is the era of champs after all, and Dillashaw decided he wanted to throw his hat into the ring, where he went down to flyweight to try to take the belt from Cejudo. But of course, we'll talk more about that in the next video. So, although this kind of was a for better or for worse move, it did leave an opening for what to do with these 2 contenders. Let's see. We have 2 contenders, both want a title shot, both have a pretty good claim, but the champion is doing something else right now and won't be able to defend his belt for a while. What to do with these contenders?
Let them fight.
The fight was held in Fortaleza, Brazil, February 2nd, 2019, for the UFC on ESPN2 card. And immediately you notice Marlon is much more relaxed. He's looking for his openings more, and he's overall just a lot calmer and a lot more patient. For the first few minutes, they both mainly lead with some jabs, a couple leg kicks, especially from Marlon. Sun Tzu tries a spinning back kick, there are a couple 1-2s, but mainly for the first few minutes, they're just trying to find their openings and get their timing. And eventually, Marlon finds his opening. Look at a Sun Tzu's guard. Every time Marlon comes in, or almost every time, a Sun Tzu covers the right side of his head with his right arm and reaches out with his left to parry and post. Marlon is also very good at working with the jab, and he's leading with it a lot. So, a Sun Tzu's kind of gotten used to doing the same thing, covering the right side of his head and looking to parry a jab or a straight. And so, Marlon, with his lightning speed, cuts the corner, and it looks like a Sun Tzu reached out with his left arm to parry either a jab or a straight. I can't see it too well from this angle, but it looks like he did that. But Marlon is so fast, and this isn't really set up all that impressively. But it's timed well, and the speed is ridiculous. It cracks a Sun Tzu clean, rocks him. You see him stagger. A Sun Tzu seemingly reaches out with his left hand to try to prevent any other overhand or another overhand. And then you see Marlon's left hand touch a Sun Tzu's right. A Sun Tzu pushes Marlon's left down, looking like he was almost thinking it was a punch and trying to parry it. And then, his hands are too far away from his face, he's rocked, and Marlon just cracks him with another overhand. Catching a Sun Tzu with 2 almost entirely naked overhands that weren't really set up all that well is just... that's insane. The second one puts him on the ground. Now, when watching this fight live and I saw Marlon follow him to the ground, I was thinking, whoa, are you sure about that? That could be a little dangerous. Sun Tzu's a very good grappler. But Marlon is also a good grappler. He passed a Sun Tzu's guard like it was butter and got some nice ground and pound off. It was very impressive. I mean, well, look at who he works with. Eventually, they end up in a position, and Sun Tzu keeps on trying to use the butterfly guard, and at this point, Marlon goes for a strike, and they scramble. Again, the angle's kind of weird, but it looks like a Sun Tzu was trying to scramble to his feet, or maybe reverse. I think he was trying to get to his feet. His hand is posted. He's got the hand on Marlon, got the arm wrapped on Marlon. It looks like he's trying to scramble to his feet. But for a moment, his head ends up on the left side of Marlon's body. And if you've ever taken any jiu-jitsu class or any submission sparring, anything like that, you know what to do when somebody's head ends up in that type of position. And Marlon snatches that guillotine like a lightning. It was so fast. Arm in guillotine, he pulls on a Sun Tzu, forces a Sun Tzu to scooch a bit to the cage, and then Marlon just goes for it. He rolls, he turns a Sun Tzu, ends up in a tight squeeze, and he just strangles it from there, and a Sun Tzu taps. Impressive win. He showed all the things that make him dangerous. He showed his speed, he showed his power, he showed his eye for openings and his timing. And he showed how impressive his ground game is, too. It's actually very impressive. Catching a Sun Tzu in a guillotine choke and tapping him out is crazy. I think a Sun Tzu was expecting more ground and pound. I don't know if he was expecting a guillotine or not, but, only he knows that. So, as you can tell from this video, Marlon Moraes is a threat to anybody. He is so dangerous, but he is up against quite a formidable foe. We'll get to him tomorrow. Mr. Gold Medal. Oh boy.